Hello, welcome to this week's Samplecast. I'm Ruben Cornell, I'm your host every week that I can manage to put a show together anyway. And there is a big show for you guys this week. We've got a composer interview with the one and only James Everingham, and he's going to walk us through some of his techniques and a new sample library that's on the market. We've also got a lot of bargains, freebies, developer updates and news, but I'm going to kick off with something that's brand new. So I guess I better start with what some people will consider the biggest announcement of the week. Spitfire held a live video show on Wednesday night where they announced a couple of new things. I was due to go, but despite my best efforts, I couldn't manage to find a train that wasn't delayed by hours due to the snowstorms in the UK. So this is why I can't get down to see Spitfire in London. So like everybody else, I had to watch it on the Facebook live stream. Firstly, Spitfire announced hand Zimmer strings, which runs in the newly designed sample player that they've developed. This doesn't yet have a name as far as I could tell. They sample 344 string players in separate sections over at Air Lyndhurst Studios. It's a massive library with 147 different techniques and up to 26 microphone positions. They've already released a bunch of walkthrough videos online with Oliver and Paul, so do check those out. Pre-orders are being taken right now, and you get a nice little book with a bunch of session photos if you opt for the pre-order. Time will tell if the new sample player is a good move. There's lots of speculation on forums at the moment and over on Facebook as to what will happen with this new player, but I'll leave that to the gossip mongers over there, as we only deal with cold hard facts on Samplecast, despite the occasional irreverence. The other thing that Spitfire announced is their new Lab series of libraries that's now going to be completely free, contained in the new player and interface, and Spitfire will be donating 1% of their total revenue to charity in the future, so well done on that, guys. The new Labs products aren't available just yet, but do keep an eye on the Spitfire website page for upcoming releases. So on to the rest of this week's news, and let's kick off with a new Dronar library from Gothic Instruments. This one is focused around source samples of brass recordings, especially recorded from a session with a concert brass band in the north of England. Then these sounds have been processed and looped to create evolving pads, atmospheres and drones. Now if you've seen the Dronar interface before, you'll know exactly what to expect with layering options and intensity, movement and arpeggiator controls. I'll not go into it too deeply here, as you can see what it's all about in the review that I did over in Samplecast show 23. Once again, thanks to Time and Space for throwing me a copy of this, and to be frank, I really enjoyed playing with it. The 248 patches here were right up my alley. They're strong, confident sounds, some with a lovely sparkly top end. Dronar brass runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.7.3 and above. It takes up to 7 GB on your hard drive, and there's more info at the Time and Space website. Audio Reward have just released Seurat, I think that's the pronunciation. It's a Kontakt instrument designed for movie scoring and sound design. It runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.7 and above, and it's about 1.2 gigs in size. The processing within the engine is what sets it apart from a lot of other libraries. It's got granular synthesis there with some very varied functions. There are 175 snapshots which use 81 different source sounds, and some of the sources are very unusual. Do have a look at the website for the details. I've had the chance to spend a few hours with this instrument, and it has some very unusual sounds, especially the kind of strummed effects which have a sort of ever-evolving overtone and harmonics. I really like the sound of those. Although the interface can take a little bit of getting used to, I'm going to find it useful for melodic phrases and background atmospheres, there's no doubt about that. It's also priced very competitively, so do check it out at Kontakt Hub. There's a new addition to Soundiron's Vintage Keys series. Now this is Microrgan. They've sampled a rare analog synth from the 1950s that has 9 different waveform shapes. It's about 650 megs in size, runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.5.1 and later. And there are two main instrument presets here. Now these do sound to me like a kind of weird little electronic harmonium. Have a listen to the videos and see what you think. There's also an additional 20 custom sound design ones, which I did prefer the sound of. There's LFO, filter and ARP controls, along with a more comprehensive effects page in the usual Soundiron style. It's definitely a weird one, but do have a look at the Soundiron site if you fancy it. Here's a blast from the past. Producer Begg has created a collection of electronic loops and instruments that sound like they're straight out of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. That's his next collection. It's called Hauntology and it's out now. This 3 GB library is published by Zero G. It contains 553 WAV and AI-FF loops, along with 43 instruments for Kontakt and some other samplers as well. The style here is old analog electronica, with the source emphasis sounds based around physical synths, circuits and tape machines. So think Tangerine Dream and John Carpenter scores, well, according to the blurb anyway. There's actually quite a cool 30-minute interview with Begg over on the Zero G YouTube channel. That's well worth a watch if you're into this kind of thing and these kind of sounds. Hauntology is available now from Zero G and Time and Space. A quick mention for this new little library from Loopstiller Creme. It's double Creme drums. Now this is a retro 70s sounding kit with up to 7 round robins and 10 velocity layers. This runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.3 and above. There are 20 different Kontakt presets here for different feels, and a bonus 50 MIDI loops as well that you can use to trigger the instrument. Although it's a small library, I really love the sound of it from the walkthrough video, so I look forward to getting my hands on this for a play. This next one's called Overtonics, and it's another splendid pack from Cinetools, who, as far as I'm concerned, they keep knocking it out of the park with the FX and trailer packs. You know the score with this kind of thing by now. You've got hard-hitting slams, downers, explosions, transitions, stutters, whooshes, all of those good things. They've sent me this pack for a little look, and what I really loved about it is that many of the samples have variations, so you can avoid playing the same sound over and over again in that machine gun style. This is a good general use trailer sounds WAV pack, which I think I'm going to be getting a lot of use out of. Do click the link in the show notes for more details. It's been an absolute snowpocalypse here in the UK this week, as you saw earlier, so here's an appropriately named chill out pack from Black Octopus Sound. It's Arctic Chill. This runs at about half a gig in size with about 100 drum hits and loops. There's ambiences, melodies, effects and more. I've had a go with this pack and it's quite lovely, lots of useful little sounds, although nothing really loops properly except for the drums. But don't let that put you off, you can mess about with it in your DAW. Do check out the details at the Black Octopus Sound website. And lastly, it's time for another lovingly crafted library from Will Bedford over at Fracture Sounds, but this time he's teamed up with TV composer James Everingham to sample a felt piano. This is called the Woodchester piano, and it runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.3 and above, and features realistic pedal, key and pianist noises. The main draw here and the USP is the 3 atmosphere layers that can be dialed in various combinations to complement the lovely piano tone. This is one of those libraries that fits into modern TV and artsy movie scoring. I've tried it and it fits that purpose superbly well. It's definitely worth checking out, and if you want to hear more about the production of this library, James Everingham will be chatting about it on the Samplecast podcast. I'll be coming onto that later on in the show. Welcome to this week's bargain-tastic section of the show, and first off, Acoustic Samples, who've released a keyboard bundle which is 63% off. I've had the pleasure of putting together the walkthrough video for this. It's 1960s and 70s keyboard instruments running in the free UVI player. You will need an iLock account to authorise these, although you don't need a physical iLock. There's a clavinet, electric piano and whirly, and they're all beautifully sampled. They've got so many options for playback, cab emulation, tremolo and circuit modelling. I don't really have time to go into all the details here, but do check out my walkthrough video. The package is about 8 GB in size and it's available now at 63% off, just €99 over at VST Buzz. Do check the link in the show notes. Next up, a drum and percussion bundle from Aria Sounds. I'm pretty sure I've featured some of these instruments before and they seem to get very keen responses on various forums. People do like them. Personally, I do as well, and I don't think I've ever seen them cheaper. So the collection here is Colossal Toms, Surdos, snares and Catalyst percussion, which is a mix of all sorts of different epic percussion stuff. These run in the full version of Kontakt, and in total it's about 6 GB in size. Currently 75% off at £18.50 plus VAT. Do head over to the Kontakt Hub site for details. Lastly, a quick mention for something I've been working on and included in last week's Samplecast newsletter. It's a multi-band imager compressor and metering plugin with mid-side modes and both normal compression and upwards expansion as well. This is Axis by Soundspot. I did put together the walkthrough video for this for them and had a fun time carrying out some multi-band trickery on familiar sounds in my collection. It's well worth a look as the intro price is currently 90% off, just £13. This week's composer demo and interview is with James Everingham. He's an accomplished TV composer who's collaborated with Fracture Sounds on a demo for their new library Woodchester piano. In the interview here, he's going to talk about his work, influences, creation of the track and mixing techniques. You can catch up with all of that on the Samplecast podcast at all the usual podcast providers. Don't forget that the podcast also includes extended chat from me, more audio from everything I've featured on the show and lots of other things. Go and check it out. Here are this week's big freebies, and the first one is another one of those pay what you want sample packs. So really, if you want to, you could technically pay nothing if you were feeling a bit mean.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cents in my bank account.
This is Endangered Rhythms by Sample Science. It's quite a large collection of electric bass and drum loops in WAV and Rex 2 format. You've got about 1 GB in total. I downloaded them for play, so you don't have to. They're nicely categorised and organised by tempo. Some of the loops aren't very smooth, but with a bit of massaging, you should be able to get some use out of these. Do check the link in the show notes for details. Next up, a nice little freebie for signing up to the Paris sampling mailing list. It's a full-range Plucked piano library running in the full version of Kontakt 5.5.2 and above, and it's about 300 megabytes in size. There are some basic onboard controls for sound shaping. I've downloaded it and had a little play. It's rather nice in a kind of imperfect, perfect kind of way. Do check it out. The link to download it is in the show notes. So there's a couple of nice developer updates out this week, and I'm going to kick off with a new pack from Toontrack. They seem to think that the sound of UK pop is so unique that it deserves its own sample and MIDI expansion pack. This runs in Easy Drummer 2 and Superior Drummer 3, and it's called UK Pop. There's definitely no harm in having a few new drum kits to hand, and there are 4 new kits and a few new extras thrown in as well, in amongst a whole new load of MIDI grooves performed by Ash Sohn. He's a renowned session drummer from the UK and he's performed on some very famous tracks. Time and Space did send this to me for a go-round, and I liked some of the samples on offer, although perhaps my idea of UK pop is a little different to the guys over at Toontrack. Although the pack is billed as mix ready, I did find myself dialing in a little bit of distortion here and there and a bit of transient shaping to get the drums to really pop, to really leap out at me. The drum hits here are certainly tighter than most of the others in Superior Drummer 3, so if you're after that kind of sound, then UK pop could be for you. Do have a look now at the Toontrack website, and Time and Space, it's available. Sonuscore had quite a hit on their hands a few months back with the release of the Orchestra, and I was pretty impressed with it when I reviewed it back in Samplecast show 49. However, I did point out at the time a few improvements that could have been made within an update, and guess what? They've addressed pretty much everything I suggested, plus a few more on top. You can now reassign the expression to a different controller other than the mod wheel. There are multi-output options for the mixer, more than 35 new presets and 15 new multis have been added, and there's a new glockenspiel as well. I think these additions will be useful for people that have already got the library. I'm not sure there's enough there to encourage naysayers to change their mind, but you can check out the full list of upgrades at the Sonuscore site. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's Samplecast. Don't forget that you can hear more audio examples, more of me gabbling on, and also the full composer interview with James Everingham over on the Samplecast podcast. And I'll see you again next week. Bye bye now.